What seems harmless but is incredibly dangerous. Eating raw or undercooked kidney beans can make you very sick or even kill you. It only takes like 3 undercooked kidney beans to ruin your day. Note that canned beans are safe as they have been cooked as part of the canning process. It's only the dried beans you have to soak and cook properly. Hanging around idiots. Most of the time they only do dumb sh that affects themselves, but when they do something that affects you it can change your whole life. So just remember, if you're in with a group of imbeciles, you're rolling the dice with your life every second. It's like standing in low-grade radiation. It's unnoticeable right up until it's incurable. I went on the most idiotic camping trip with 2 people I knew pretty well and their 8 bros from high school. Not complete idiots by themselves, but together it was pure top fuel stupid. They had all this history together and made completely rookie mistakes that you never make in the backcountry. I cringed every step of that trip. Anytime one of them would want to talk over an idea or a route, they packed 125-pound packs each. They scaled a dry, vertical waterfall of nearly 200 feet to save 15 minutes without climbing gear, packs on. I caught up with them because they were completely exhausted after. No one brought first aid, except my little army surplus kit. No one but me brought gloves. Above 10 kft in the eastern Sierras in late September, the group voted to not hang our food and bear canisters in a tree away from camp. Result: bear came through camp every night at 3 AM and ransacked the place. One member was a nurse and brought high-powered painkillers because he thought it would help acclimate the altitude. Everyone just got wasted and didn't even set up camp the first night. One dude fell asleep in a marsh and was sick the rest of the trip. They straight up stole all my paracord while I was fishing to build a raft out of found branches. It sank and they had to swim back. We had water filters, but they would eat snow to make drinks with. Oh, yeah, everyone packed 2 handles of booze. I packed long steel BBQ tongs. Everyone laughed at me all the way up. They became the community tongs once we needed to cook and make a fire. They thought it was a good idea to split up on the way down for some reason. I was fine with it. No one was going to beat me down the mountain after that bullsh. Weirdly specific, but leaking hydraulic fluid from a small crack in a pressurized manifold. It doesn't shoot out like a gas would. Instead looks like droplets. But if you put your thumb over it, it shoots toxic hydraulic fluid into your bloodstream. This is the concept of an injection injury. This can happen from any highly pressurized liquid like say a power washer. Basically, the high pressure shoots bacteria, toxins, foreign material deep into your tissues, which manifests in something much more serious than what appears to be just a deep cut, because the chance for serious infection, like amputation needing infection, is quite high. Usually opening up the entire wound and surgically cleaning all affected tissue out is proper treatment to prevent it from spreadings. And now I have a new fear. I'd watch this episode of CSI, or should I say C. This is an understatement of how dangerous hydraulic leaks are. If you're working with hydraulics and you feel a small sting or cut, you need to go to the ER immediately, and even then you may lose a limb. Walking off the boardwalks at Yellowstone. They have several signs pressing that even though the ground may look normal in those areas, it could be really thin. I've seen people do it anyway. Looks safe. Last time I was at Yellowstone I was with friends at Old Faithful. Some guy had walked out onto the outcropping which surrounds the geyser, which prompted quite the fit from a very unamused park ranger. My favorite Yellowstone story comes from a ranger. He had a family that thought bear spray was like mosquito spray and they sprayed themselves. A few ambulances later and they learned the difference. I remember seeing an article about this years ago. The guy, well, it basically said he boiled. Reminded me of that scene in the beginning of Dante's Peak with the hot springs. He not only boiled, but the hot, acidic waters basically dissolved his body. There was nothing to recover the next day. All because this stupid guy and his sister wanted to find a place to hot pot illegally soak in a hot spring. Texting co-workers after you've been drinking. Confined spaces, above ground or worse, below the surface. If you do urban exploration, caving, or anything like that, get a 4-gas detector, clip it to your chest or belt, and set the alarm to maximum. If it makes a sound, get the F out or you are going to die. There's that Peppa Pig episode about spiders, teaching UK kids that they are nice and friendly, and that episode is banned in Australia. So there you go. Here's my answer. Peppa Pig episodes. Putting your feet up on the dash while riding as a passenger in a moving car. You do not want to see post-accident photos of what happens when someone is in that posture in a surprise head-on collision. My buddy was riding with his brother several years back and had his feet up. They were at a gas station or something and some random dude came up and told him he should take his feet down because it's dangerous. He did. They got into a terrible accident only minutes later. They were both somehow unharmed. Scary to think what would have happened had that random stranger not spoken up. I'm not going to look it up, but I'm guessing involuntary origami? That's the least bloody and painful description of a human being broken in half that I have ever read. The photos I saw, a teenage girl's hips both dislocated and the femoral heads were forced out of her skin through that little fold where thigh becomes butt. The injuries were incompatible with life, as they say. Jiu-jitsu. The gentle art of folding clothes while people are still in them. Some person on the internet. I know someone that did this and was in a wheelchair for the rest of her life after a car accident. I took care of a patient who this happened to. IQ nurse. I was there the day she was told she was paralyzed. Awful experience. Do not recommend. I do this. I won't now. We did it. Read it. It's awful. Even after telling people about it, they shrug it off. SMH. Give them perspective. I was a pedestrian hit by a truck on a crosswalk. My pelvic injuries were identical to the ones with feet on dashboard, or so the X-ray tech told me, and those techs have access to some medical history. My pelvis was a puzzle and I'm now about 10 pounds heavier because of all my plates, and these injuries also can mess up spines so they could easily end up in a wheelchair. I sincerely hope they never go through any of the pain I went through. I snapped at my now husband when we were dating to get his feet off my dash or I would pull over the car. He was really surprised but stopped. Lol. Mandoline slicer. Use the hand guard or lose a thumb. Giving grapes to dogs. They are quite toxic. Onions and xylitol, a sweetener. 2. Garage door springs. I DIY a lot of things, but after reading about door springs I'll let the professionals handle it. When I was buying my house, the inspector went through and gave me tips on how I could fix up some of the issues he found. Mostly stuff like you can prevent mildew by lining the crawl space with more plastic, and if you put more insulation here it'll cut down on your electric bill. Then he got to the stiff garage door spring. Whatever you do, don't try to fix that on your own. Don't even think about it. It'll take your arm off. My dad lost part of his nose to one of them. Doctor said if he had been an inch closer he would probably have died. We were in our living room watching TV and heard a very loud bang. We searched the garage and couldn't figure out what made the noise, until the next morning when we opened the garage door. It folded like a Chinese fan. Turns out, the spring broke and that's what made the noise. We weren't even in the garage when it happened. Scary stuff. Yes, my dad is a garage door guy and has told me horror stories about winding them. Garage doors in general are dangerous for kids and pets. I knew someone whose coat hood strings got caught on a garage door and she was hung with her airway restricted until her dad found her. Lived the rest of her life severely disabled. Lint. Too much lint in a dryer can cause a fire. Gotta clean that stuff out on the regular. You also need to clean the vent that goes from the back of your dryer, through your wall, or ceiling, to the outside. Mine is at least 30 feet long and I cleaned it for the first time this month because my dryer was taking longer and longer to dry clothes. Turns out there was a clog that could have caused a fire, and I pulled out a couple trash bags full of lint. Our house was built in 2004 and by the look of it this might have been the first time anyone cleaned the vent. Serious question. How TF do you clean a 30-foot tube? I've never cleaned mine and suddenly feel the need to clean it immediately. It's always been a rule in my family that you clean the lint trap after every use. Can never be too careful. I never realized that people don't do that. I was taught that it's part of the laundry routine. Open dryer, take clothes out, clean lint trap, close door. If you don't already, which apparently people don't, you should make a habit of it. Over-the-counter medicines. Just because you can get something without a prescription does not mean it's safe in all cases or in high doses. Traveling drilled that into me. Something common in my home country would be prescription only or even banned in another, and vice versa. Usually it's because of concerns over excessive use or just whatever side effects being deemed unacceptable in one place or not another. Makes you realize how much of the politics of a place come into play in terms of your safety. A former NFL player died today from liver disease caused by OTC pain medication. Tylenol causes 40% of liver failure deaths in the US. Climbing a ladder. It doesn't even have to be a big ladder. Even one of those 2-step ladders are incredibly dangerous. One ill-placed step can change your entire life. If I'm not mistaken, the majority of workplace deaths are from falling off a ladder. I use them daily at work, and am careful to the point where I've been made fun of for it. Like I give a sh though. When I die, it's sure as hell not going to be at work lol. My grandpa agrees. This thread. It's making me not wanna leave the house ever again. But there's so many things in your house that can kill you. Keep reading. Cleaning ammonia with bleach. Never clean up cat pee with bleach. When my dad taught me to clean the litter box, that was the first thing he said. It's a violation of the Geneva Convention and could kill the family. My roommate worked for a supermarket as a teenager. No one taught him about ammonia and chlorine, bleach, and he mixed both in his mop bucket. A thick fog started radiating from the bucket. He told his manager and, thankfully, the store was evacuated immediately. It's wild that a clueless teen had the ingredients to make WWI-style poison gas just like that. Pushing someone's face into a cake as a joke. Some cakes have little wooden spikes inside to support the cake. Saw a post where a girl's face was gored by one of these. Not to mention literally no one wants their face shoved into a cake. Plus you ruin a perfectly good, probably really expensive, cake. Jumping on a trampoline. Worked IMS for years. A trampoline fun zone place opened up in our city. Suddenly it accounted for like 10% of our traumas. Mostly just broken arms and legs, but still. One of the funnier parenting stories is my wife took our 2-year-old son to a trampoline place in town. They had a good time, but she was carrying him back to the car and she tripped in a pothole in the parking lot and he fell on his face and had to go to sick kids as he was a bit woozy after. He was fine, but those trampoline places are going to hurt you one way or the other, especially if you're jumping onto a netless one, surrounded by a brick retaining wall on 3 sides, from the deck. I don't know how the worst injury was a sprained ankle. We used to jump off the roof of my neighbor's porch, hit the trampoline, flip onto the 4-foot pool. None of us are dead and I don't know how. Cat bites. Cat fangs puncture deep and trap bacteria deep within your tissue, leading to horrible infections. You might think one isn't serious because it's not bleeding much, but that just means the wound isn't flushing properly if you get seriously bitten by a cat. It's very important to go to urgent care so they can properly disinfect the wound. I was bitten by my own cat and spent a week in the hospital. Cat was limping. Turns out this was due to a spiral fracture. I was trying to get him into a carrier to take him to the vet and accidentally grabbed the broken leg, which I didn't know was broken at the time. He bit me between the knuckles of my index and middle finger. My wife took the cat to the vet while I went to urgent care. They cleaned the wound and prescribed me some oral antibiotics within a few hours of the bite. Of course, this all happens on a Friday. Everything was basically fine on Friday. Just a couple cuts and a band-aid. Swelling was worse on Saturday but basically still fine. But by Sunday morning my hand looked like I had a softball growing out of my palm. I couldn't touch my thumb to any of my fingers. It was pouring out nasty looking pus whenever I tried to make a fist. And I started to get red streaks lines going up towards my elbow. My sister-in-law is a pediatrician, so I texted her a pic of it. She called me back almost immediately and told me to go the emergency room the instant we hung up. I get to the ER and after an hour or so they admitted me to the hospital. I remained in the hospital for 8 days. IV antibiotics for MRSA and staph every 4 hours to start. Once blood results came back they determined I had just gotten the wrong type of antibiotic from urgent care. Staph positive vs staph negative or some such. So they were able to move me to changing the IV every 8 hours. Ended up costing more than 12k in hospital bills for me and another 2.5k in surgery for the cat. This was a rescue cat we got for free, shots and all. Any wound that had red lines or streaks traveling need immediate attention if you don't want to die. You got real unlucky there. Most house cats aren't going to give you blood poisoning. But yeah, always treat animals' bites as serious. The cinnamon challenge, that was all the rage a few years back. When aspirated, it can cause severe burns on mask passages and airways. I am actually deathly allergic to cinnamon. I joke with my friends that on my deathbed I'd like to try cinnamon. Walking up and down house stairs. Throwing your friend in the pool. There was that woman who did a Reddit AMA a few years back about how she became paralyzed because one of her friends pushed her in a pool. That was at the woman's bridal shower too. If it's the same woman I'm thinking of, she's become really outspoken on the topic. Oof, heartbreaking. But she seems upbeat and cool about it. I'm glad to see this is the top answer, because as a doctor, this is what I was going to post. Don't push your friends in the pool. Do not dive into any body of water that you don't know the depth of. Do not jump into old quarries or lakes lined with trees. ATVs are also a great way to get yourself killed, but even I admit to still riding them sometimes. But please wear a helmet and only ride on trails. Pushing people over as a prank. Yep, you should only ever push people over out of malice and discontent. Defenestration is fun. A group of kids at my high school would tabletop other students at football games where one kid would get down on all fours behind an unsuspecting victim and their buddy would push the person over the other. All fun and games until they put the star soccer player in a wheelchair for the rest of her high school career. After that, the school disallowed any students from being anywhere except the bleachers at the games. Water in general, but fast moving water specifically. 2 or 3 inches of water is all that's needed to sweep you off of your feet if it's moving fast. 12 inches of water will lift and sweep away a car. Water is heavy and will F you up if you don't respect it. Was tubing down a river one time and it was pretty slow current, so nice and leisurely. We came up to log jam and so the plan was just to jump off and carry our tubes over the jam. I missed my mark and fell into the water and got sucked under the log jam so fast it was crazy. All I remember is seeing logs above me and holding my breath. Luckily my jacket caught on some branches close to where I went in and stopped me from going all the way under to for sure death, I would think. I was able to crawl upside down quickly before I lost my breath and make it to the surface, but even with adrenaline and me being a fairly strong kid for my age, it still took a lot of effort against that current. Just because water looks calm on the surface doesn't mean it is calm in other areas. Garage door springs. People don't realize just how much tension those things are actually under. Never repair a garage door yourself unless you know exactly what you're doing. The stored energy in them is enough to break bones and sever limbs. About 3 years ago, I had just snubbed out a smoke and went into my house from my garage. Just as I was about to close the door from the garage to the house, I heard a gunshot and a loud bang. I peeked around the house from inside and couldn't see anyone, no cars or bystanders. A few hours later, I went out for another smoke and half of my garage door spring was in the floor by the door, and the other half was on the other side of the garage. The kinetic potential those springs have is effing scary. If I'd been hit on the head, I very well could have died. So yeah, garage springs are nasty things. Silence in a house with toddlers. Toddler noises in a house at night when you don't have children. Riding a horse. Riptide and 4-foot waves. My friend drowned at the beach from a sneaker set. Terrible. Texting while driving. You might think this is obvious, but I see many people texting and driving every day. Not cool and definitely not safe. I saw a dude pull onto a busy street from a parking lot without looking up from his phone for even a second to see if it was clear. I couldn't believe the stupidity and luck I'd just seen. Plutonium. If no one told you what it was, you'd think it was just a random piece of metal. Slap it with tungsten. Put beryllium on top and slam with tungsten hammer. Especially if you steal it from the Libyans. Flashbacks to HBO's Chernobyl. Do you taste metal? Yeah, what is that? Spillways. As an engineer, I have seen and understand that they can kill you. I know that when the toe or last half of a spillway is filled and there is a pool at the bottom, a whirlpool can be created. Not the whirlpool you're thinking of at the public pool that spins you around. It's similar but turned on its side. The whirlpool it created will prevent you from swimming away from the spillway or even create waves pushing you down. The water goes down the spillway and then rushes back up where the incoming water pushes it back down again. The force can be so great that you cannot get out. Kids see these spillways as water slides with pools on the bottom. If they're large spillways, canoeiers see them as a small waterfall. These hidden whirlpool can kill you. People go down the spillways and get trapped and will drown. They can become extremely dangerous. Inhaling helium. Letting water from a freshwater source up your nose. Most of the time it will be fine, but every once in a while you'll get a brain-eating amoeba that has a 99.9% fatality rate. This is in the US as well. Well, Cows seem pretty harmless, but these guys aren't to be underestimated. I got attacked by a mother one for getting a bit too close to the calf. I was lucky the horns were specifically made to be round, otherwise I would have lived with one kidney from then on, since it rammed into my kidney but not hard enough to damage, thankfully. Still hurt like hell after though. Your chance of being killed by a cow are low, but never zero. Cat scratch fever. Yeah, the song is pretty cool, but that's about it. A stray cat scratched my dad one time and FED his sharp. An unloaded gun, or even worse, an unloaded gun. There is a reason as to why gun instructors always tell you to treat every firearm as if it was loaded. Petting someone's dog without asking, or worse, hugging and putting their face near theirs. People need to know that not all dogs are Doug from the movie Up. Silicone chips. Very safe in the finished product form, but dear god, the chemicals involved are dangerous. One component in production is pure hydrogen and it is the safest one. Another is trichloroethylene. Its auto-ignite temp is 40 Fahrenheit. It's combustible on contact with moisture, which includes humidity. When it mixes with water and doesn't manage to explode, its temperature skyrockets and the byproduct is hydrochloric acid. I learned this while working in a polysilicon factory when they dumped it on my crew from an empty vessel. Cute little palm-sized octopi with cute little blue rings on it. Sounds adorable, up until the tetrodotoxin starts doing its thing, I suppose. Everyone in Australia puckered when this video surfaced. Rule number 1 of Australia: don't touch the wildlife. Rule number 2: always bring a local and watch their actions. Some of our cutest wildlife can be the most dangerous. Rule number 3: don't touch the wildlife. Following too closely in your car, not just tailgating, but even following 50+ feet behind in fast traffic. Next time you're in your car, wait for the car in front of you to pass a clear marker like an exit sign or a bridge. Then count the seconds until you reach this marker. This is the amount of time you have to react, and potentially save your own life. In an emergency, I always shoot for 3 seconds, which is about 20 car lengths in 70 miles per hour traffic. For people who follow a 3 car lengths rule, you have about 0.4 seconds to react in the same situation, and I'm not that quick under pressure. To add to this, too many people only look at the car in front, next and behind them. Your response will be much faster and safer if you look further down the road. Sometimes I even responded faster to something happening in the front than the car in front of me. The worst is when I'm trying to leave a big gap, but it's busy traffic and other cars just come and fill it in instantly. There's basically no way to drive safely on a busy urban freeway. Grapefruit juice. By itself it's perfectly fine, but a lot of people aren't aware that grapefruit juice specifically has interactions with a lot of different drugs, both medical and recreational, and can be potentially very dangerous when combined. I work in a pharmacy. We have a specific warning label dedicated to not eating grapefruit while on a medication. Does it just stop them working, or react to cause toxic byproducts? For kids, someone online with a sympathetic ear for their problems. Responsible adults will try to put you in touch with real life help, not encourage a pattern of reliance and inappropriate intimacy. Bonus danger points on anyone who throws down you're really mature for your age. Predators online work just like real life hunting predators. Their first goal is to separate you from your herd. Even offline, these predators exist while using the same tactics like being chill and giving you a beer when you're 16 Becca you seemed down. A child. Alone they may not seem like much, but in groups they can cause mass havoc. In fact, a child that's home alone is incredibly dangerous. The nail scene will always get me. Sports gambling apps. Too much quick dopamine instant pleasure. When you rely on it, it's not fun, because eventually those highs wear off and you're left with an even worse depression or state of mind.